Welcome to a cupán tea. Folks, I have to tell you, the older I'm getting, the simpler the mind is becoming. That's it. The older I'm getting, the simpler the mind. I am beginning to see things clearly, as the fellow says. I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. Anyway, all I am saying to you is that things are becoming very simplistic for me. Do you know, I had a revelation, a notion that hit my mind that the great cause of our world being the way that it is down to one thing: lies. We need a judicial system because of lies. We have a government where we have two sides of the house because of lies. We have, from the very get-go, just even as a child, when you come in and you've chocolate all over your face, and the first thing that your mother does is, now, don't lie to me, but have you been eating the chocolate? Of course, the evidence is displayed on one's face. And yet, how often do people go and say, no, I didn't eat anything? We just inherently lie. And the problem is that the world is the way it is because of lies. Fleetwood Mac, Christy McVie, now dead and gone, went and used to sing a song, Little Lies. Tell me lies, tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. She was actually wanting this person to lie to her. Guns N' Roses went and had their second album was called Lies. In other words, what they're saying is that the whole thing, all the songs that are on it, are nothing but lies. So anyone who was singing those songs was just singing lies. Pontius Pilate goes and says, what is truth, when he looks at Jesus? And that brings us into the whole judicial system. And is the judicial system not all based on one thing? Trying to discover the truth. But because it's trying to discover the truth, it is based on the premise that the people in there are actually going to be lying. That's the whole point. Crazy when I think about it. It's so simple. Everything in this world is because of lies. Oh, but you mentioned the government. Yeah, well, think about it. Why do we have an opposition? We have an opposition there to bring balance, because if all the power was just in the governing side of the house, well, they could go and tell us people whatever they like and just make it happen. And I could get into examples of that. Such as, there was beef factories closed down in this country because it was going to be better years ago. And as a result, we put loads of people out of business in Ireland and started importing sugar. Briquette factories have been closed. Harvesting of peat in this country has been closed in the not too distant past. Just think about this. Why? Because we're told that this is for the betterment of the environment. And yet the very thing we end up doing then is we start importing briquettes from Eastern Europe back here to Ireland. Now, how is that environmentally friendly if what we've done is we've stopped to save the environment, but then we're importing it because someone else is going and polluting the environment? Doesn't make sense. So we bought into a lie. So yes, there are lies in politics. That's the whole point. The premise of everything in society, believe it or not, it's that simplistic. It's just based on a lying culture. The world over, it's not just in Ireland. The world over, it's based on a lying culture. And this is what makes it so profound. That yes, Pontius Pilate asked a question, what is truth? Nothing has changed. And here's my point. It really excites me. It's just so simple. My point is this: that there's one thing that is impossible for the God of the impossible to do. It tells us in Hebrews in chapter 6. And this is what it says. People swear by someone greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to all argument. Because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, that's those who believe in him, He confirmed it with an oath. God did this so that by two unchangeable things, in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled to take hold of the hope set before us can be greatly encouraged. There's the two things. It's impossible for God to lie, and we can be greatly encouraged. Now here's the thing. Right, here is the thing. You don't genuinely believe that God doesn't lie. Because if we did, we would take God at his word. If we did, when we read the Bible and we go and read the promises that are in it, we'd put them into practice because we would believe that God was going to actually fulfill his word. But you don't. Because you're so used to living in a lying culture that Satan's words still ring in your head all the way back from the garden. Did God really say? How can you be sure that God is telling the truth? That's always in the back of your mind. Did God really say? Because we are so used to living in a culture that tells lies, that tells untruths. I thought it was interesting. I was reading a court papers there not too long ago, and it just mentioned about untruths. No, I would call them lies. Half-truths. White lies, black lies, all these sort of... We love to categorize it. It's all just basically lies. And because we live in a culture where we're instantly weighing up what the other person says, we don't actually go and expect or believe them to be telling us the truth. So much so that even in the letter that Paul writes to Timothy, he goes and says, I've been called to be an apostle, a herald, a teacher. I am not lying. I am telling the truth, he says. Think about it. The thing that governs our world is this one statement. Did God really say? Because if we really went and read God's word and took God at his word, genuinely believed that it is impossible for God to lie, we would live in a whole different type of society and world. We surely would. Because the thing is then when we read our Bibles, we would actually go and say, hang on a second, God said this. God said if I go and trust in him with all of my heart, he will lead me in the paths of righteousness. God went and said, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And we just take what God was saying at face value because God said it. Jesus Christ went and said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Jesus Christ went and said, where two of you agree on prayer, it will be done. Now here's the thing. Do you believe that? Do you really believe it? Do I believe it? You know, the answer is yes. I believe it. I believe it more now. In my old age, I believe it more now than I ever did before. And though I may not physically see it with my eyes, I believe it more now because here's why. I take great comfort in the fact that God cannot lie. In a society that is full of lies, there's one thing that is constant. God cannot. And what's the joy that we can have from that? Here it is. We can be greatly encouraged. Why? Because we have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters into the inner sanctuary behind the curtain where our forerunner Jesus has entered on our behalf. That to me is exciting. It is exciting. Just think about what I was saying. Do you really take God at his word? Or do the words of Satan still ring in your ears? Did God really say? Thank you for joining me for this on Cupán.